Hey guys, it's Dallas with Modern Catholic. This is part 2 of the pro-choice, pro-life talk. Here we go. So in the first video, I talked about these 5 questions. Number 1, should women who experience complications during pregnancy be forced to give birth if it puts their own life at risk? Number 2, is the ban on abortion an attack on women's rights? Number 3, at what point is what's in the womb considered a life? Number 4, does that life have its own rights? And number 5, do the rights of the woman supersede the rights of what's in her womb, simply because what's in her womb is fully dependent upon her? If you haven't seen it yet, go check that one out. In this video, I'm going to talk about these 5. Should men have a say in the matter? Should victims of rape or incest that result in pregnancy be able to have an abortion? Is it worse to suffer or inflict suffering on someone else? Isn't it better to not bring children into a world of suffering? And why is it called pro-choice? Should men have a say in the matter? Absolutely, absolutely. And if anyone suggests otherwise, then propose this back to them. Let's say I am watching 2 people talk and one person says something racist to the other person. Should I be able to say, hey, whoa, don't say that, that's racist, don't do that? Absolutely, right? No one would try to argue that I shouldn't be able to do that. Well, hold on a second. It's not directly involving me. I'm not the person involved in it. I'm just a bystander. Look, we know this, that right is right and wrong is wrong. Now, we may not like someone telling us that what we're doing is wrong, but we have to say it. Now, this message is specifically for the guys. If you feel like you've been maybe pressured into not making a comment on it, or if you are convinced that you really shouldn't have a say, I'll tell you this: men are here to protect. There's no one more worthy of protection than innocent children. So don't shy away from voicing that truth, even if it means that women, maybe even women really close to you, are going to be upset with you for saying that. Men are here to protect. Step up and protect. But what about women who are victims of rape or incest that result in pregnancy? Shouldn't they be able to have an abortion? For a long time, my answer to this one was yes, because I really thought that this, if there was any justifiable scenario, this was the one. Because they didn't ask for it. They didn't choose it. It was forced upon them. And so for a long time I said, in this case, it's okay, yes. And when I learned what the Catholic Church's teaching on it was, I really grappled hard with it. The Church says that even in these really tragic circumstances, it is not permissible for a woman to go seek an abortion, have an abortion, even if she is a victim of rape or incest that results in pregnancy. And here's the argument that I heard that really shifted the way that I think about it. A question was asked, and it's the question that's at the very core of this scenario. Is it better to suffer or inflict suffering on someone else? Is it better to be the victim or to be someone who inflicts something bad? Now, I know that at first, if we may be tentative to accepting that. That's a hard question to have to ask yourself. Is it better for me to suffer, or what? Because naturally we would just pass it on to someone else. But the truth of the matter is, it's less bad to be the victim of suffering than to push that onto someone else, especially an innocent child. And so again, when you look at it that way, it becomes a little bit more clear as to which is right and which is wrong. Which, by the way, cases of abortion in which women are victims of rape or incest that result in pregnancy account for 1%, and some studies suggest even less than 1% of all abortion cases. Now, usually Women cite multiple reasons for seeking an abortion, but 90% of the time, one of the reasons is because it'll cause a change in lifestyle. Mother Teresa said, "Isn't it a poverty that a child must die so that you may live as you wish?" And you could say, well, okay, so if it's not better to inflict suffering, then a woman should be able to have an abortion, because sometimes a lot of these children grow up in families that are broken. They don't have financial stability. The baby will grow up in a really bad environment, and so we shouldn't inflict that suffering on them. So we should have an abortion. No, and here's why. This reminds me of another conversation that I had on this very same topic. So the woman asked everyone in the room, she said, "Raise your hand if you've ever suffered before." Of course, everyone looks around the room and they raise their hand. And she said, "Okay, so since you all have suffered, then should we have just taken your lives?" And it was silent. This was a room that was split half and half, pro-choice and pro-life. And it was silent. And I think, again, when you get to the core of it, because really that's the question at the core of it, when you look at it like that, you say, well, maybe that argument isn't a great argument to try to make anymore. So that begs an answer to the question, is it better to live and suffer or not live and consequently not have to suffer? Again, it kind of brings back to mind the woman's question, because you all have suffered, should we have ended your lives? No, and no one would argue that. By the way, not allowing children to be born into a world of suffering will never make suffering not exist in the world. There will always be suffering because there are people that make up the world, people are imperfect, people make mistakes, people do wrong things. So not allowing them to be born into a world of suffering will never stop suffering from existing. And even if, let's say someone said, well, no, it's better to not live and not suffer. That's why people commit suicide. I'd say, one, that's tragic. It's a tragedy. But let's go with that for a moment. Committing suicide is someone making that decision for his or her own self. You can't make that decision for someone else, because now that's no longer suicide, that's homicide. That's killing someone else, which leads me to my last point. What is, or why do we call it, pro-choice? There's a priest, now retired priest, Father John Karapi. He was giving a talk and he said to the audience, "Why do they call it pro-choice? Choose what? Choose what?" Have you heard of the incident where the guy murdered his pregnant girlfriend? Double homicide. They kill tens of millions of babies. The guy kills his pregnant girlfriend. Double homicide. What's that? He goes, what is that? I'll tell you what it is. It's moral, political, intellectual schizophrenia. It's worse than Hitler's crime. Worse. And we said never again. We said we would never see that again. And yet we do it again. Over and over again. That's a poverty. That's a deep wound in society. We can't justify it anymore. I'll say this now. I 100% respect the office of the president. But it's a scandal for anyone, but especially a Catholic president, to promote this idea to others, to say that people should be able to choose to have an abortion. It's not enough for him to personally reject that. His job, his role as president is to serve the people, to do what's best for society. Allowing this to take place is not what's best for society. It's actually killing society. And as Pope Benedict XVI said, abortion is a deep, deep wound in our society. So I hope that, maybe this video makes it to his desk one day. That would be kind of neat. But I at least pray that he changes his position on this publicly. And I'll conclude with this. This is not passing judgment. This is just calling something for what it is. You know, I hope that when I do something wrong, if I don't recognize it first myself, that someone else tells me and helps me understand why and prays for me. Because I do pray for those who've had abortions or are considering having an abortion or are promoting for the right of others to choose to have an abortion. Because it's wrong. Not judgment. Not judgment. But it is wrong. We have a responsibility, all of us, believer and non-believer. We have a moral responsibility to do what's good for others. And that'll never happen perfectly. We'll all continue to make mistakes. But what we can't do is allow ourselves to be convinced that something so terribly wrong is somehow right. We can't do that if we're going to humbly share the truth, beauty, and goodness, which is the Catholic Christian faith, for all to enjoy. I'm Dallas. Have a blessed day.